Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
And this is Coach's Corner.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah.
I got a question for you today,
Yeah.
Brian.
Okay, you got a question.
I'm just going to get right into it.
Okay.
Do you ever have clients that you're working with and you're working on the 3-step check and you get to the capital protection piece, which is where we kind of look in history to make sure, we can have pretty good evidence that we're at least not going to lose money, even if we don't make money, how far it would go down, how far we'd have to go down in order to sell the item. Do you ever have people ask you, hey, I'm okay with losing a little bit of money if I can get this sale because of why? Do you ever have that happen?
Well, because of usually because, I need to get some transactions under my belt so that I can expand my approval so that I can go bigger, wider, faster.
And have more choices.
Absolutely. I hear it all the time, actually. And this is one of those things that you have to figure out. How does this fit your risk tolerance?
Yeah. And this is going to be your own because, again, we're talking about while we're taking money out of our pockets right now. We haven't created any money yet. So we're not asking you to do this. We just want to talk about some of the reasons that people ask this and what we're really looking at with risk. So I have the same thing. I have people say, I'm going to look at it as an investment. I'm going to take $100 and risk losing that in order to get the sales that create more options for me in the form of Amazon opens more brands and categories for me to choose from, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well,
that way of looking at risk.
Yeah, you said I'm going to put in $100. It's worth the whatever. That feels like a gamble to me a little bit. And so I'm not a big here's $100. Maybe I'll triple my money. Right? That's not a good for me. That doesn't fit for me. That's not my risk tolerance.
So does that fit for you in any way, in a different way?
Well, first of all, I wanted to address the misconception that there's so few things available for you to sell that you have to consider losing money in order to gain your approvals. That's just not true. Right?
We've seen many, many people do it without risking.
Yeah. That's just not, there's so many ways to.
Good point.
Yeah. But then if you want to expand your ability to sell some things faster, then you can certainly consider selling things for a break even. And as you say, some people even go, I'd be willing to make this little investment here, right? Maybe I'll lose $1 on each one of these that I sell on the 4 units that I send in as a test.
Sure. Yeah. Or even 2 or 3 is fine.
But this is a strategic approach.
Right.
This isn't let me throw some chips on the table and see what happens.
Okay, good point. And so I'm glad we came around to that because there is risk in anything that you do. Any business is going to have some sort of risk. So we can't say there's no risk, but we can say that this model is the lowest risk that we have seen ever. And we've seen quite a few entrepreneurial things.
Put it in perspective. It's not just business that has risk. Waking up in the morning has risk. Going to bed at night has risk.
Yes.
Your food, your commute, your walk down the hall.
Yes.
Everything has a risk that you have built your internal systems for to figure out what things are worth the risk and what things aren't.
Exactly. So this is when you're building an Amazon business in the beginning, this is how you're building your tolerance or understanding your tolerance for risk. And that takes practice, right?
Yes.
But we don't want to have any illusions that there's no risk at all, that nothing's going to happen, that you will always get your money back just because you looked at capital protection. That's not the case at all. What we want to do is help you understand risk and understand what the loss would be so you can decide whether you can tolerate that or not, right?
That's right. What is the thing that you're tolerating? When you weigh the things that could potentially go against you if you did something like this, what's the worst case scenario? That's why the whole thing that we're trying to do is the worst case scenario is get your money back. Yeah. Right? Now, no guarantees. Right. But we stack the deck in our favor to a point where this is really, you'd be hard pressed to not make money unless you made your adjustment accordingly, right? Like I'll be willing to on this one because this is going to help me get ungated, for some strategic reason. That's absolutely the way of doing it. And in that case, it's less about math, right? It's not about the numbers, how good I am at calculating the odds and all this kind of stuff, right? This needs to fit into your strategy.
Right. And so I think that when people start thinking that way and they ask me that question, this is when I really, really want to make sure that they understand what the risk is and then that they're still willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
And then I totally can support them. No problem, of course. If I believe you understand it, then we're going to go. And that's the way it is with a lot of things that we coach, right? We don't necessarily, there's not necessarily a right answer, but if you understand what happens if you do this and what happens if you do that, then you can make your decision based on your requirements.
So if you put a framework in place about the risks that you're taking and sort of setting it up for your own success, and so that it can't really get too out of control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you don't want to just go crazy.
You're going to look at like, what are the chances that this could go against me? What is it going to cost me if it does? And what's the flip side? What is my potential gain?
Yes.
And, does that potential gain outweigh these first two things we were talking about?
Right. So initially, well, before we go into what you just said, I want to add one more thing, which is, do I have anything to balance that? So I do often say, all right, if you're going to test 5 ASINs this week, just make one of them be that kind of thing and make the other ones, follow the rule. Or take your best 5. And if a couple of those are that, then go ahead as long as you're clear and understand the risk there.
Something else, though, that makes me think of when you're saying that is you say like, well, maybe you didn't use this word, but what came to mind for me was tolerance. Can your account tolerate this?
Yes.
Can your business tolerate this? And we're putting it into a financial sense here in terms of risk, but you often say in the same instance as well, if Amazon is selling on that listing, it doesn't usually scare people off, but this is a risk. Right? What if Amazon...
It just adds one more layer to what you should consider.
Or if the brand is selling on the listing, they're not the only ones. Yeah. They're one of 14 people selling on then, you should probably be aware that is a risk as well.
Exactly.
And if you should get, something that goes against your account, can your account tolerate that? In the same way that can you and your business tolerate if you lost $1 or whatever the amount is for every sale?
So that brings us around to absolutely true. And all of those things that you mentioned as examples are not it's right or it's wrong or you can or you can't. It's you decide, can you tolerate it or not? Can your business tolerate it?
Yeah.
Can
your
that
ego
shipment
tolerate it?
That's a huge thing. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's not nothing right there. Yeah. Will you be ashamed to tell your mastermind about it next week, right? Okay. So I want to go back to what you said. It's not as much about being good at math, this understanding your risk and taking sound risks, maybe I'll say. It's more about developing a disciplined way to think about this uncertainty that we're calling risk.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, the framework, right?
Yeah, the framework.
Yeah.
What's the probability that it'll go right? What's the probability it'll go wrong? What's the cost of being right? If it does go wrong, what's my cost? And can I tolerate that? And the most important one that we try to focus on, but can't remember the others is, what's my upside?
Well,
what can I get out of this if I take a little bit of risk?
I put you on the spot here.
Oh.
How do you determine the probability?
This is based on what you know, right? So there are several ways you can determine the probability. This is probability. This is not certainty. So we don't have a scripted way to determine probability. I'm saying this is more of a feeling. Do I feel like do I have any experience that tells me that this would be probable or not? Do I have someone who is a mentor or a coach of mine that I could ask, what do you think the probability of this in your more experience? It all comes from someone's experience. So the more experience you have of your own or that you can glean from others, the better your guess on that probability is going to be. What do you think?
So we actually
put me on the spot, and I came up with something. So.
And I was thinking about it as you were answering. So
no,
because I didn't have a good answer.
I call no fair.
I didn't have a good answer right out of the gate. But we use in the 3-step check, we say, that lowest, the price goes below your break even for a limited amount of time. And we say 7 days, 10 days. Some people say, I'm willing to go a month, whatever that is. That has to gauge, if we're talking about tests.
Yeah.
I think that has to weigh in on the probability part, right? And so it doesn't mean that it's never been below there. Maybe ideally it has been, always been above your break even. And the probability that you will be able to, sell for your target margin or at least break even is very high. Compared to instances where it has gone down below your break even for, periods of time, in which case that probability is probably going to come down.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. The other thing we have besides experience of ours and that we can borrow is the Keepa chart, the history that we know. Now, we have to understand what the Keepa chart is telling us and what it's not telling us, but that will give us some information to help us gauge this probability. I also want to throw in here, since we're talking about the 3-step check and the risk, the capital protection part of that. This is just the 3-step check in itself is only to decide if you want to test or not. It does not tell you whether it's going to win or not. It doesn't tell you whether you can replenish or not.
Right.
The test will tell you that.
That's right.
And we have that in a 4-week test the way we teach it. But the 3-step check does not tell you any of that. It tells you whether it's one that has a pretty good chance of at least getting your money back. Your risk of losing money is very low if you use the 3-step check. So it's a good one to test to see if you can make money. Just want to make that clear before we went further.
Again, the framework to help you find more successful tests.
Yes.
Right? Put these things into place. Okay.
All right. So I feel like we've distinguished between what's a reckless or unknown risk, like you were saying, putting your money in the ante and seeing if you get a full house or not, right? As opposed to intentional risk. Yeah. That we know our framework for risking. We know that we're within our tolerance. We've identified our tolerance and we're going to do it on purpose. There's a difference, right?
Right. And I think there's also don't do it blindly or ignorantly, right? Not that you're doing it intentionally, but unless you have gone in and done this sort of analysis, it doesn't make sense to just everyone always wants to know, right? You're evaluating an ACE, and is this a good one? That is being not ignorant, right? Don't just say, this with it. We have seen sometimes where people are like, I know it's always sold for $5 below my break even, but I want to see if I can sell above the buy box. Okay,
first of all, we don't know how much it's sold for.
Listed for. Okay. We can connect the dots on it. It's the best we can do. But I wouldn't, and I don't think I would advise anyone who's listening to roll the dice like that. That's definitely a gamble, and it's may not be ignorant, but it's maybe not the best decision to make, at least for me in my business.
Well, when there's so much available to us, if not our own experience, but the experience of others that we can borrow, why would we do that?
Yeah.
I don't know why we would do that.
I know that you've had conversations that you share with me with some of our shared coaching clients that conversation is like, I know I might lose a little bit, but it gets me to advance my business. Yeah. What is the upside?
The upside of losing $1, but still getting a sale is that Amazon sees a successful transaction. Those add up. And as successful transactions build, I start getting approvals for more and more categories and brands that I didn't have before. So when I go and I say, apply for this brand, and it says, we need an invoice, a certain kind, and where you bought 100 units and all these things just to apply, like you're applying for a job. You got to have a resume and your job history and your education. And then that doesn't guarantee you get the job. I want to make that clear about this application too. It doesn't guarantee you get the approval. It just says in order to apply, you got to have these certain things. They're not easy to get in the way they want them. But one day, as you make sales, let's get back to the upside of making a sale. It's a successful transaction with Amazon will build, and you'll have more and more of those. And as you get time and sales under your belt, Amazon's going to open more and more brands and categories. So you may click on one of those that was requiring an invoice before, and all of a sudden it says, congratulations, you're approved to sell. That's what we call an auto approval. And those happen more and more as you get time and sales under your belt. And it doesn't take as much as you think it might. You got to get going.
In addition to that level of, have to provide an invoice to being automatically approved, there are some ASINs that say restricted, like you can't even apply.
Yeah.
But guess what? that status can change
It
from
can.
you can't apply to supply an invoice to you're automatically approved.
It can. Yeah. I mean, when I'm new, I'm probably not going to dive into those,
no.
but just know that these things can all change. There's nothing set in stone, and there's nothing, we don't have insight into anything that gives us a rhyme or reason that we can tell you it's exactly this many that you have to sell, or in this category or this brand. It's not like that. Amazon's constantly adjusting that based on probably the sellers that they have available, the offers they have available, and what time of year it is. And many things go into that. But we do know that that's what makes the change. That's what opens up more one by one as time goes by. So getting back to what the risk is, the upside is I get a sale, I get a successful transaction, and that builds a little more trust with Amazon.
Well, and this speaks to why we're doing this. In the beginning, we're taking all this, the business is funded out of pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it's still relatively low stakes when you think about it. Even if you come into this, you're going to start this with a big wad of cash, you can't start. You're somewhat limited in how fast you can start. But these low, it's pretty low stakes for a very calculated reason that we're doing this. We're picking very specific products, very specific qualities of these products, and what the part of those qualities is what's in the Keepa chart and how much it costs you and what your potential profit is and your break even, all that kind of stuff. These are very strategic decisions that you are making here to help you determine am I willing to take a higher risk or not?
Right. Exactly. And now we've done a lot of setup here, and we've done a lot of, kind of helping you to understand the terms that we're using in this episode. But I want to make it clear. What we're looking for is not a risk just to take a risk.
Right.
We want a risk in order to build something that will last and give us balance so that we have tolerance for more risk in the future and lower the necessity for it. Yes.
And what are we trying to build, Rob and Joy?
We're trying to build a foundation. We're trying to build a business that is predictable, sustainable, and scalable.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
That takes time. That's not, I can show you how to make $100, in 2 weeks. That's possible. But that does not give you predictability, sustainability, and scalability.
Right. Right. So one of the main things for that predictability is having a foundation.
Yeah.
A foundation. And you go to build this foundation, it requires a lot of work that sometimes doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
Right? We hear a lot of sellers who are like, they want to go, 10 for 10 on their tests or 5 out of 5 on their tests. And what's the reality?
Yeah, I'd rather go for 150 out of 200 on my test.
Exactly. Right. We're talking about bigger numbers. This is an over time thing, not my very first, out of the gate, I want to be 100%.
No, it's not going to happen. In fact, you should plan on that's a low probability that you send in 5 tests, your first shipment, and that all of those, or even any of those, will be replenishable. That is part of the game. And this is exactly what happens in a lab when you're testing, when you're doing an experiment.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what doesn't work in order to move forward to what does work. And that's part of the deal.
That's what all of these are. It's just little experiments. It's always a little experiment. But we kind of know what the ingredients are so that we are better at producing the end result. Right.
We learn.
Yeah.
We learn. And
we come into it with a framework from day one.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what we are teaching,
so that we have a chance
and then that increases our probability of success greatly.
Yes.
And these are the tools and systems and, concepts that you get in the Proven Amazon course.
Absolutely. I would also say that winning, especially while you're building that foundation, is not the goal. Getting replenishments is a byproduct of the goal, which is to build a foundation of understanding and experience that will help you create predictability.
Well, what you're doing is you're creating intrinsic value. This value is in you as you go through and earn,
it's underestimated. It really is.
Stripes, so to speak. This knowledge and experience that you're gaining is building your value and your ability to apply this any future endeavor, but specifically especially in the e-commerce space. And I like to point out that you don't want to just investigate the ones that, the little experiments that you did that blew up, that didn't work, right? Obviously, we want to dig into those.
Learn from those.
How do we not let that happen again? But we also want to investigate the ones that did work and just see what sort of variables were in play that may have been working in our favor and we didn't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because that's what we want to know what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And if that were obvious in the beginning, and if that were something that we could, clearly spell out for you, then that wouldn't be hard. Mm-hmm. But, we'd tell you. If we could do that, we would take our head, our experience off and put our experience in you. But experience is not one of those things that you can just get in rote memory.
So what happens though is we get I'm glad we go to great lengths to normalize.
Yeah.
When things don't go exactly according to plan, because that happens in life. It happens in business. It happens in this business, right? Mm-hmm. When things don't go according to plan. And, best laid plans and all that sort of stuff. But mm-hmm. it can be tough sometimes to not take a blow to your ego. Yeah. When if you're in your first, let's say, if you're trying to go 150 out of 200, but your first 20, you were like 3 for 20. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Right? That's tough to take.
Yeah.
Especially when you've gotten yourself all worked up and ready to go and you've committed and mm-hmm. you've taken the emotional risk, which is, I think, higher many times for many people than the dollar risk. And then it doesn't work out, and it doesn't work out, and it doesn't work. And there's one. Oh, then the next 3 didn't work out. It's a tough emotional roller coaster. And if we can prepare for that, it makes it easier. There's no room for fear of that. There's no room for shame in that mm-hmm. or self-doubt because of that. This is the plan, and this is what we meant to do. Mm-hmm. So buck up, let it be what it is, and carry it through until it gets lighter. It will get lighter. That burden will get lighter. That fear will get lighter. Resist it, and let it be what it is.
I've always
know that you're winning when that happens, because that's what has to happen.
I've always felt like I was a late bloomer in whatever I was doing in terms of maturity throughout my life. Not necessarily physical maturity, but
not so much with the gray hair. You're pretty early blooming on that.
Certainly immature in my height.
But you haven't really matured in height yet.
No, I haven't matured in height. But now I got off track. Why was I saying this?
Well, the shame and the fear and the burden you carry.
Oh, yeah. So let's say I did go 3 for 10.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be tough sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you're resolved, if you're absolutely resolved that this is inevitable for you, then you will pass everybody.
Yes.
You will absolutely pass everybody if you stick with it, right? This is what I want to say, I know I'm a late bloomer, and I'm going to catch the lead here on this last lap, right? Or the last 2 laps of this race.
Yep. Pouring it on.
Yeah. Right now, I've been conserving my energy up until now. Not really, but certainly learned a lot along the way so that now when I press on the gas, I'm going. And I can see all these people who were laughing at me as they're passing me by. I'm just waving as I'm going by now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way it works. I always say, too, if I told you that in order to get 3 replenishable ASINs, mm-hmm. you had to send in 10 tests and not make any money on 7 of them, what would you do?
Send in 10 tests.
Send in 10 tests as mm-hmm. fast as I could get 10 tests.
Yeah.
If that were the formula, and I wish it were, you would go and send in 10 tests. Well, here's a formula. Fewer are going to become replenishables than don't in the beginning. That's how it is. So get those tests in, get those ones that don't work done behind you, and then more and more and more will start working as you get experience.
And just keep in mind, sometimes you're going to go 10 for 10. Sometimes you'll go 5 for 5.
Absolutely.
You'll have stretches where you're like 19 for 20. Mm-hmm. But on the whole, you're really still shooting for 80%, mm-hmm. right? I mean, if your numbers come in at 80%.
On tests that I didn't lose money?
Long term. Yeah. So if I'm measuring my average over the last however many years, 6+ years, my
80% wins.
My 80% absolutely wins, right?
Yeah.
So
I like those odds.
But I don't start at 80%. I start at, like you're talking about, 20,
and then
30,
we're
40,
making
50%.
numbers up. We're not saying it's going to be 80% or 79% or any of that. We're just giving you a way to look at it that might be helpful.
But for you, if you can find a way, for me, this is what worked for me. Once I found a way to get insight from the little victories and the little defeats, is how then I started to build this snowball of momentum.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's underrated how much you can learn by just doing it and seeing the results and examining them and adjusting accordingly. I think it's underrated. So when we talk about understanding your risk and doing it on purpose, we're not talking about luck. We're talking about strategic risk. Luck is when you spin the wheel, see what comes up, right? That's luck.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, 100% will come up and that'll be good.
It's a risk strategy.
It's a strategy.
Risk strategy. As long as you've got a strategy for managing risk, you'll be okay. Doesn't mean you may have to, tweak that strategy.
And you absolutely will, because that experience is going to tell you where you need to adjust.
Yes.
But you can't get it until you get the experience.
That's right.
And you can't do that until you take action.
It's only good when it's battle tested.
Right.
Right. It sounds great on paper, but until you get in there and you realize how you have to respond when things don't go your way, then it's less meaningful.
So again, we've got the questions. What's the risk? How do we decide what the risk is? Well, in the 3-step check, we've given you that for deciding whether it's a low enough risk to test or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I don't think I ever really considered it, even after discussing this content before we hit the record button today. I never really thought about how the path, what we outline in the book, is a way to minimize and mitigate risk.
Yes.
It is
and
just
understand
that.
What risk there is.
Right. Understanding the risks, knowing how to mitigate your risks, and knowing where you can take chances and how do you reap the benefits of all of that is really what that system is, now that you say that.
Well, and I would argue that it's also a framework for understanding the upside. How good can it get? Probably better than what I can imagine, but what I can imagine is better than traditionally people think. So it does give you more insight into what could be an upside and where to start.
Yeah.
And then the last question is, what's the trap is what comes to mind. I don't think that's a really good way to say it, but where can I get caught? In other words, this is where I say, what are the actual rights and wrongs? Okay, you can take the risk, you can, tolerate the risk and put some stuff in, it doesn't work out and you lose your money. That's one thing. But don't forget to consider the things that are right and wrong. And I can think of 2 of them that I talk about all the time, and I can't even come up with any others, but 2 of them are: make sure that the listing that you are going to make an offer on is branded properly. It is the correct brand in the brand field, which matches the title, which matches what's in the picture, which matches what you're selling. That is important. The pre-flight inspection, a lot of people in our classes, in our workshops, call it the brand triangle.
Yep.
Yeah, that's important. The other side of that is bridging the gap to an authorized seller of the brand to get your inventory. That means no third-party sellers on Walmart, on eBay, on any of those, no third-party sellers, and only sources that are authorized by the brand to sell those brands. Those 2 things. I'm not going to get too much into that, but those 2 things.
Because we always do 3s.
Okay.
We always work in 3s. We got the pre-flight, we got the bridging the gap, and then we got a 3-step check, right? And then the 4th one that we do, which is the 4-week test, is really about maximizing your profit, not reducing your risk necessarily. So,
right. Absolutely right. The one of the reasons that we have this 4-week test that we've written about and done workshops on is not because, if it works here, it wins. If it doesn't work here, it doesn't win. What's the least I can sell it for? It's about finding out what's the most I can win with. What's the most I can sell it for?
Right.
That's what that's about.
Yeah. What's my upside?
And that's why it's a little bit more, maximizing upside. Yeah. And that's why it's a little bit more complicated if you do the 4-week test. And there are other ways to do that. But don't discount that, because you might be leaving a lot of profit sitting there just because you're not willing to put that part into your system.
I've heard over and over about how people, I know it's getting ready to come available, so I'm getting aggressive on my price.
No.
Like, holy smokes,
No.
this is...
No.
Right? I know, right? We want to leave it out there. Like,
let it test at that price.
Yes.
While it's within the 48-hour window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation. But that's the point, though, is we're trying to help understand the risk and make a strategy for the risk by using a framework so that you don't get caught unawares of, bitten by something that you weren't expecting.
I think we only called it out one time, but one of the biggest crutches that we use, and many people will say the only tool you probably really need in this business, is Keepa. And Keepa tells you a lot of information, but let's just be clear, it's not a crystal ball.
Yeah.
Right? It is more of like it does tell you a story of what has historically happened with this ASIN and various qualities associated with it and the various offers associated with it, et cetera. But in no way is it a guarantee. But all we can do, well, I always say the best indication of the future is the past. And so that's the reason that we do rely on it. The
best information we have about the past.
Yes, right.
And so that's why we rely on Keepa to tell us a lot of information, gives us evidence, but it does not give us proof of anything.
And I know one of the things that you like to say, I sort of spilled the beans on it earlier, but the tolerance, right?
Yeah.
Once you have built this foundation, then your tolerance goes way up. This is, in other words, like you have earned the right now to increase your risk level as you want to.
Yes. And hopefully once you've built that foundation, you've built a foundation that helps you not keep taking money out of your own pocket. But now you're playing with house money.
That's right. We like playing with house money.
That's right. This is money we've created out of nothing. We've gotten our money back in our pockets. And now we can work with what we're creating, and we understand how to create more of it.
Yeah.
Now we can cook with gas.
That's right.
Right? All right. So we've gone a lot into risk. It's not luck. There is a tolerance associated, and we can have a risk strategy rather than, just throwing it up and seeing what happens. Do you have a quote for us today, Brian?
Well, before I get to the quote, let me just say, and reiterate the part from the beginning. Risk is necessary. If there were no risk, there would be no opportunity. So risk is absolutely necessary, and that's why having a strategy around it is so critically important.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yes, and now I do have a quote.
And now do you have a quote for us, Brian?
I do. Well, it's right on point today. This quote comes to us from Richard Branson. If you opt for a safe life, you'll never know what it's like to win.
Yeah, so we could not take any risk in business. I mean, like you said, we're taking risks all the time, but in business, we could not take what we would consider a risk, but then we'd never know the joy of what that risk might bring us.
Well, I think it is scary at first, right?
Yeah.
You're, especially for me, I mean, I know everyone's different, right? But I equate the risk of going up and talking to a pretty girl. It was a huge risk because I might get my ego crushed by someone saying, talk to the hand, or, no, I don't want to dance with you, or whatever it is. Right. Right. And I never really worked myself into this sort of, I would say some of my friends did, where they knew they had to ask 100 girls. Yeah. And
they were shooting for 150 out of 200.
Yes, right. Or they're shooting for 20 out of 100.
And you were shooting for 1 out of 1.
And I'm shooting for 1 out of 1. Exactly. Right. Hey, and I did pretty good. I shot with you, I gotta say.
That's so nice. Everybody's going, oh. Well, you're right. It's scary at first.
Yes, but every time
fear and shame of messing up is there. It's real. Go ahead.
But every time that you do make the play, whether it works or not, I think you are building your tolerance, right?
Yep.
Especially if you know that in the long run, there's a win. There's going to be a win. And this is the inevitability I was talking about.
Yeah. And once you've got the reps under your belt, you get to see. You get to see at a higher level what's going to work, what doesn't going to work. It doesn't make you freeze up and go, oh, no, that didn't work. Stop. It goes, okay, there's one that didn't work. Let's see what that is. All right. Don't do that again. This part of it was good. Let's move on. Right? You lean into it. And that's how it becomes as you do those reps and get that experience behind you. That's the important part in the beginning.
All right. So last question of the day.
Yes.
Let's say I am 1 for 10.
Okay.
What's my next step?
Test more ASINs.
Test more ASINs, even if I'm only 1 for 10.
Yeah, because you're shooting for 150 out of 200.
That's right. Right. So keep it going.
Keep it going.
Great to see you.
You got this. We're here for you. Talk soon.
Hey, thanks for joining us for today's episode. But before I let you go, let's spend a couple minutes with a good friend of mine, Jeff Schick of jeffschick.com. Of course, if you've listened for a while, you know he is the resident expert that we love around here for all things Amazon policy, Walmart, legal, e-commerce, anything along those lines. Man, they've seen it. They've done it. They're serving hundreds of our listeners with excellence for many, many years. So I'm always excited to see what he's got on his mind. He always teaches us something useful. What's up these days, Jeff? What are you seeing, man?
So what's on my mind this week is buyer-seller messaging. So, a lot of times we'll see posts where people will say like, "Oh, this cease and desist letter came in through buyer-seller messaging, and therefore I can ignore it because." It's probably from another seller. That's one possible answer. Or it came in from buyer-seller messaging, so they're not a serious brand, so I don't have to worry about the threat. And so it's really what the whole point of the to talk about is that is to think about buyer-seller messaging as an early warning system. Is it as official as a cease and desist letter showing up by certified mail or by FedEx? Of course not. It's not. It doesn't care. It's not. No one would say that it's as serious. But it still can have, far-reaching consequences because the interesting thing about the brands that tend to do, what I call self-help measures through buyer-seller messaging is that those brands are likely to file the false IP complaints that get someone's account suspended because they don't know what they're doing. So, interesting fun fact about Voorhees is that they may send a lot of scary letters, but their brands generally don't file IP complaints against sellers. On the other side of the spectrum, the companies that do send cease and desist letters or that sent, via buyer-seller messaging, or now we're seeing some by text message, even coming from law firms. And those are real threats to think about because those brands are the most likely to then escalate it to, false IP complaints against a seller. And while those are treatable, they sometimes can cause businesses to get shut down in the process.
So what I'm hearing so far is even if the scary message comes through Amazon messaging, it doesn't mean you can safely ignore it, which is kind of some of the popular sweeping advice that you'll see in the Facebook groups and such. And anytime you see universal advice, there's nuance to everything. So that's why I love having you guys on retainer, Jeff, is we'll just send it to you. It's like when I get a letter from the IRS, I don't even open it. I just send it to my accountant who's been in the business for years. Same thing with Amazon policy, legal, stuff like this. Just send it to you guys. And most of the time, I got to say, yeah, you can ignore that. But sometimes it's like, you know what, we might want to back off of that particular ASIN or that brand. You might want to, shelve them for a while. We were hearing some things. So I love that. I love that advice today, that general sweeping advice that says, you could ignore messaging. There's no way to prove it's actually the brand anyway. It's not necessarily good policy, is it?
No, it's not. It's good if you don't care about the person who you're giving the advice to. I'll put it that way.
Right.
But
I love it.
yeah.
Well, that is really good to know. So Amazon does allow, or at least it accommodates brands that reach out to sellers through their own messaging system. And some of those could actually be legit. Although I have heard those cases, man, where it's just another seller trying to scare someone. And it's hard to know the difference sometimes. But that's why we got you guys on retainer to help discern. All right. Well, anything else along these lines? I think we kind of made our point, but anything else that you're seeing that we need to know about along these lines?
I guess one thing I'd clarify too about the whole buyer-seller messaging is that technically it is a violation of Amazon terms of service to send those messages via buyer-seller messaging. But even though it may be against terms of service, it's not stopping the brands from doing it. And that's why I always tell people, if the brand is willing to violate terms of service doing that, what else are they willing to violate? And usually it's brand registry terms of service next. So that's, that's where we always say, hey, that just because they broke a rule doesn't mean you can ignore it because that's between them and Amazon. But if they broke that rule, what else are they willing to break? So
Yes. Exactly. And on this too, one of the lessons you taught me, I think this is the add-on little tip. See if I get this one right, Jeff. But I know my team and I, we stopped messaging other sellers entirely, ever through the system, just because you're potentially opening up a bit of a can of worms to message another seller and say, hey, what are you doing with this ASIN? Or you're not supposed to do that. You are not the Amazon seller police. Don't try to be. Don't contact other sellers informing them when they violated policy, because that can be a black mark on you. I think that's a good tag on. Am I stating that correctly?
No, you're 100% correct there, because we have had sellers get suspended because they thought they were being helpful by telling another seller that they were breaking policy, and then the other seller reported them to Amazon, and then Amazon said that you're intentionally harming or harassing another vendor on the platform.
Yeah, intimidating someone else, right or wrong.
Exactly.
Let Amazon be the Amazon police. You are not deputized.
Right. It is their business and their decision making. Right. That's all that matters in there.
That's good stuff. A couple of really good tips for folks today. I really appreciate you, Jeff. And for those who don't know, let me just remind you, jeffschick.com is where you want to go. Put these guys on retainer, a few dollars per month. Could save you thousands if you run into a legal situation, and you can bounce all these things past them. He's got such a great team, and we just love working with you. Thanks for sponsoring the show, Jeff.
You're welcome. Thank you.
See you next week, right?
Sounds good. We'll be here.
Bye for now.